Hi everyone. Thanks for being here and welcome to this 8th session on transforming transportation, Spain going green, transforming transportation to address climate change. I'm Sara Canals, I'll be your moderator, and I'm very excited to be surrounded by a great host of professionals, very experienced, all working in Spanish companies that operate in Spain and beyond, and from different sectors in the transportation industry. I'm very confident that this is going to be a very fruitful exchange of ideas and debate for three reasons. The first one is because Spain has managed to stand out when it comes to having a powerful infrastructure network. Just to give you some numbers, the industry itself represents 6.9% of Spain's GDP, 10% actually if we add up the logistics activities carried out by other companies. The industry generates around 1 million jobs and a revenue of more than 100,000 million euros. And on top of that, we have a privileged location in the Mediterranean Sea, so it makes us very key when it comes to European corridors. Second, the Spanish transportation sector is also very, very engaged in the fight against climate change. It actually accounts for around 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And if we break it down, we see that roads generate most of it, and that railway actually is the mode of transportation with less carbon emissions per passenger. So they actually play a key role when it comes to fighting climate change. And at third, we also find ourselves, like many other countries I assume, at a turning point, facing big changes triggered by the eruption of massive new technologies in the mobility sector, also the willingness and the need to decarbonizing our economies, and cities with a high density of population. And that includes dealing with traffic jams or pollution or rural areas losing population and so on. So Spain has been working very hard to address all these issues, to go green, to trigger this transformation. And for that, or part of this success, is due to a framework that we implemented in 2020. We call it the Safe, Sustainable and Connected Mobility Strategy for 2030, which is a framework that every sector in the transportation industry is following. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our first guest. He's Álvaro Andrés, International Project Manager at Adif. Hola Álvaro, welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. In a nutshell, Adif is a state-owned railway company that manages basically most of the country's infrastructure. It depends on the Ministry of Transport's Mobility and Urban Agenda. They do operation and maintenance of a large network, 16,000 kilometers or almost 10,000 miles. And also they do construction, renewal, enhancement of rail infrastructure. So Álvaro, how is railway sustainable, and more specifically, how do you implement that change or that transformation in Spain?
Well, thank you for the introduction. And while answering your question, the railways in Spain is, what for us we consider is a key element for that present and future sustainable mobility. And in Spain, as you mentioned, also we are playing as a key player for that mobility. Well, in fact, in Spain, we have undergone a real revolution on railways over the last decades. Today that we are at the world map, we can say that we have been the main investor in Spain for these years. Now we are the result of an investment of around 60 billion euros during these decades for the new infrastructure, but we continue investing. We invest around 6 billion per year for the new infrastructure and also to upgrade the existing one. And in fact, that we do because in fact is to answer the kind of mobility that the society is demanding us. So we have the responsibility and also the commitment as a public entity under the ministry, of course. And that commitment also comes from the international level, the Sustainable Development Goals that we are discussing these days, European level, with that Green Deal and the Fit for 45 package. So meaning that we have to drastically reduce the emissions and become carbon neutral by 2050. And also at national level, you mentioned the mobility strategy, also the project for the law for that sustainable mobility. And if we talk about railways at the European level, also the commitment is to double the high-speed connections by 2030, and also to multiply by 3 in 2050, meaning that this kind of connection will be carbon neutral. In Spain, we have did the homework, so we are really an example. With investment, in order to reach the higher number of citizens and also to encourage the freight traffic, but also because, as you mentioned, we are the mode that really we are capable of detracting from other modes that are more, so I mean to decongest from other modes. It's not only that, but also, I mentioned investment, but also the liberalization, is that we have opened the market to competition, so we have different operators, more than 20 for freight traffic, 3 operators for passenger traffic. That is really, now is really the example in Europe. So this is the investment and the policies, but also in our activity in ADIF. Also we have a master plan to combat the climate change, meaning that also we want to really improve our energy efficiency in our activity, also to encourage the use of renewable energies, and also for the decarbonization of our railway system.
So Alvaro, how do you integrate the concept of sustainability into your business agenda, your business strategy?
Yeah.
If you could share some examples.
Yes, I was saying, yeah, as I was saying, we have this master plan that is included, in fact, in our strategy. There are different actions in that plan. The 2 main groups are adaptation and mitigation. So adaptation means to increase the resilience of our infrastructure. And mitigation, as I was saying, to become more efficient in the use of the energy, and also for the decarbonization. To give you some examples in terms of mitigation, decarbonization is still the 30% of our network is not electrified. So meaning that with those investments also we are working to continue electrifying the lines. Because in fact the 20% of the traction energy comes from diesel. So of course we want to reduce that. It's not only electrification, but also it's the type of energy. Because in fact, ADIF, we are responsible for the energy purchase that after is used in the system. So since 2019, the 100% of that energy has to have this guarantee of renewable origin. So it's electrification, is the kind of energy we are using, but also is that we can also want to consume less. So also we have a plan of a self-consumption plan. So we have identified now 50 locations where we are implementing a photovoltaics plan. So we generate also energy that after also we consume. So electrification, green energy, less energy, but also to become more efficient. For example, in the substation is the point of the contact between the electrical grid in Spain and the system. So we have an innovation plan to make that some substation what we call reversible, meaning that with an inverter equipment, there are energy maybe coming from the breaking of the trains. That surplus of the energy is not dissipated and can be returned to the grid. So meaning that we save energy, and of course after we pay less for that energy. So this can some examples of actions.
Thank you so much, Alvaro. This is a Spanish public company, but now we're going to zoom into regional level. We're going to go to Barcelona with TMB, which is Transport Metropolità de Barcelona. It's the public company that manages the urban buses and metro services, and the best person to speak to us about that is Michael Pelot. Hi, Michael. He's International Relations Manager at TMB. Welcome and thank you for being here. Michael, how do we decarbonize buses in Barcelona?
Okay. Thank you, Sarah, for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. As Sarah mentioned, we are operating buses and metro in Barcelona, and one of our mission as public transport operator is to be more accessible, cleaner, and social inclusive, giving social inclusive service in the city. Nowadays, we will talk about the carbonization of buses. Here we have 3 lines where we are working for having decarbonized bus fleet. One is the electrification. It's a quite common way to get cleaner buses. The other one is the introduction of green hydrogen in our operation, and the third one is the inclusion or the research in the area of biomethane. I would like to develop a little bit the second one. Here in the picture you can see the hydrogen refuel plant in Barcelona with one of our vehicles. Nowadays we have 8 vehicles, and we started with hydrogen 20 years ago with a project together, led by UITP, called HyQt. And in this project we learned that hydrogen is amazingly expensive to produce it. So from the energetical point of view, hydrogen is a very complex element. But nowadays, and in fact we agreed with what yesterday Mr. Picard mentioned. For us only exists green hydrogen, mean hydrogen produced with excess of green energy that you don't use at this moment, and in fact it's a way to storage this energy, producing hydrogen. So as public transport, we ran an open tender. This open tender was earned by Iberdrola. This is a Spanish private energy company. So Iberdrola produced hydrogen with the excess of green energy, and we have the commitment to consume a big part of this production. In that way, it's a kind of PPP. In that way, we assure to the private company some consumption and makes the investment in a more reliable way. So they constructed this hydrogen production and refueling plant. It's very, very close to one of our biggest depots. So the idea is they produce our hydrogen, we consume it, but they also can sell this hydrogen to a third party. And that is, for us, one of the nice part of the project, because we are encouraging the local industry to use hydrogen, because we put the instrument to put the hydrogen very, very accessible for them.
Michel, you have detailed very well the green hydrogen, and you mentioned briefly biomethane. Could you dig more into that?
Yes, of course. We are now starting a project of biomethane. It's very, very new, so I'm sorry, maybe I cannot give you a lot of details, and in fact we don't know if we will success on that project, but it's very interesting. What we do is in the processing, let's say, I don't know, any dirty water processing plant for cleaning used water. In this process they produce a lot of biogas. Biogas is a mixture between biomethane and CO2. So the idea is to cap this biogas, separate CO2 from the biomethane, and use this biomethane in the vehicles. Here the big advantage is you can use in any compressed natural gas, CNG vehicle, without modifying it. So the investment is zero from the side of the operator. And from the side of the production of this biomethane, biomethane is not CO2 free, but you produce the CO2 anyway when you clean in the water. So let's say that the final result is a very neutral one. You don't put more CO2 to the environment, but you use this biomethane to move the vehicles. So the idea is, we think is very, very interesting.
Just to follow up, what's the difference between biomethane and regular methane?
It doesn't exist any difference, only the source. If you explode natural gas, you take the natural gas from the natural resources, and in this case what you do is to recycle what you produce when you clean the water. So the big difference, and that's why we believe strongly in this project, is that the biomethane is coming from a recycling process, and you can take that using it for moving vehicles.
Thanks, Michel.
Thanks.
And now we're going to give the floor to Ines Ferguson. Good morning. Ines is the Business Development Director at TIPSA Group. Thanks for being here. And just to give you a little bit of information about TIPSA, it's a consulting and engineering company with decades of experience with all sorts of clients. But one of their area of expertise is mobility planning for public sector. So Ines, could you explain us the impact of European goals and the regulatory frameworks, specifically in mobility planning?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Good morning. So mobility planning is changing radically in Europe. And as you know, Europe has a very ambitious pathway for the digital, green, and inclusive transformation of its economies, with a specific objective of reducing by at least 55% its greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, so in only 7 years, and become carbon neutral by 2050. And 2050, yes. So this ambition is backed by funding, by a set of common definitions, and by regulation. The funding is coming from the 800 billion EU Next Generation package. The common set of regulations is the European taxonomy that defines the environmentally sustainable economic activities. And the regulation is mainly coming from the European climate law, which is being implemented in the different European countries. So it is clear that transport and mobility are critical for this digital, green, and inclusive transformation. And the European Union has established the sustainable and smart mobility strategy that wants to achieve that shift from the use of private car to mass public transit, walking, cycling, the decarbonization of fleets, all the related infrastructure, as well as hydrogen and biofuels. So at city level, any new mobility investment would have to be part of what we call the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, the SUMP, which is strictly aligned with all the commitments and the European regulations.
Could you give us some practical examples, and more specifically, how is the mobility planning changing in Spain?
Yes, so in TIPSA we develop mobility plans in Spain, in Europe, and worldwide. But we are working in several mobility plans in municipalities in the south of Spain in collaboration with the European Commission and the European Investment Bank. And we would like to highlight four main changes in how mobility plans are being developed. So first of all, the preparation of the mobility plans only a few years ago was the exclusive responsibility of the Mobility and Transport Authority within the municipality, and it is now a joint exercise with all the other areas of government, whether it's environment, health, education, tax, culture, heritage, and it's legally binding. So there's a common interest within all the areas of the municipal government to actually deliver the plan in time and budget. The other important element we see is that the strategic objectives underlying a sustainable urban mobility plan are different. It's no longer having a modal shift or reducing some operating costs, but it's really about achieving climate goals, mitigation or adaptation climate goals, about improving health or affordability. This is becoming very clear. And also the selected actions within the plan are looking very different. So a positive cost-benefit analysis a few years ago for an infrastructure investment would be enough to get funding. It's no longer the case. You need a cost-benefit analysis of the whole range of activities within the plan and a multi-criteria analysis to bring all the environmental elements much higher within the prioritization of actions. Finally, the level of ambition is rising considerably. So it's no longer about reverting negative trends within the coming years. It's about getting the actions that are going to be implemented in the short term to be very effective to achieve the goals. So, for example, ambitions can go from raising 35% the use of public transport in 10 years, or by reducing 50% the greenhouse gas emissions within the planning period. So high ambition and very effective action. And to give you an example of this, in the city of Malaga, the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan included a green, low emission areas for traffic in the metropolitan areas. It included park and ride facilities, strict parking limitations for less than 2 hours, and the development of an app for the municipality to promote multimodal public transport.
Thank you so much, Ines. And now I would like to welcome you to Felix González. Hi, Felix. Strategic Director and Board Member at Acciona. Acciona is also one of the biggest construction companies in Spain, with projects all across the globe. And they are focused in developing and managing sustainable infrastructure and also renewable energy. So, Felix, what are the main challenges when it comes to develop a resilient infrastructure?
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, very much for the introduction, and thank you all on behalf of Acciona for this opportunity. It's years since I don't visit job site or I spend time in them, but I still feel myself as an engineer. And when I try to understand something or to explain something like the resilient infrastructure, I always go to the numbers. So I will go to the numbers of our sector. Our sector, construction, is the sector of the 1/3. I said this because we are responsible of 1/3 of the natural resources consumption on the world. We are responsible of 1/3 of the greenhouse emissions, and we produce 1/3 of the waste. So this is a big responsibility, but not everything is bad in our sector. We are also responsible of the progress of the society, and in fact today more than 70% of the SDGs will be a fact through infrastructure, but it will be impossible without it. So with all this in mind, what we try to do in Acciona is to face this challenge with responsibility. We are already recovering more than 80% of our waste, and we have a plan to fully decarbonize our industry. So this is a matter of evolution. It's a matter of doing things differently, doing things with a totally different perspective. Normally, we perceive the construction business as something very old and not very very modern. But in fact, we are a very sophisticated sector. We are, in terms of technology, we are already implementing technologies like the BIM or the drones, and we are leaders worldwide in this time. I'm not talking about Acciona, I'm talking about the sector itself. So what we are trying to do is to put all this experience together to get this, let's say, this feeling of responsibility and do the things differently. When it comes to roads, we think that the road of the future is already here. We are talking about roads that are able to produce energy, roads that integrate the environment and integrate the society. And actually, it empowers the society. Thinking a road that is able to use this infrastructure to provide the society with services that initially was not part of the plan of the road. You can take profit of this infrastructure, for example, to provide with communications to the society. And especially, we put attention on the resources we are using for that. Having in mind that we use 1/3 of the natural resources that are not renewable, what we are trying to do is first to recover as much of waste as possible and to reintegrate in the process. And second, and especially, to design and to build our infrastructure with the purpose of being recuperating the future. So we are not designing and building things anymore just without thinking what the future will be. So We are concentrated on modular construction. We are concentrated on reducing the use of natural resources, reducing the use of concrete, reducing the use of steel. And this is based on design. Of course, this is not cheap. It's more expensive than the solutions we are used to. But this is only a matter of money. It's a matter of something that we have, that we use, and we put a price to everything. The key will be to put the right price to the right thing. But the future of the roads is already here.
Well, you're mentioning the future of the roads
Yeah.
of the future. So more specifically, what role do new technologies and digital transportation play in this field?
Okay. Look, coming back to the numbers, I say that we are a modern sector, but it's true that when it comes to productivity, we are not the best in comparison with automotive industry or mining industry or others. We are far from them in terms of productivity. Well, with the introduction of new technologies, artificial intelligence, and digital transformation, we'll be able to improve our productivity by 20%. And that's almost a miracle, because there is no cleanest solution or cleanest infrastructure than the infrastructure that we don't develop. So if we are able to improve our productivity, we will not be only saving money, but also saving lots of resources for other purposes. Mm-hmm. So yes, digitalization will be key in this future.
Thank you so much, Felix.
Thank you.
Now we're going to put the accent on architecture and engineering, and we're going to introduce you to IDOM, which is an engineering architecture firm specialized in different fields, such as transportation. And the best person to talk to us about it is Yolanda Cerezo. Yolanda, project director at IDOM. Welcome. Good morning. Yolanda, how are you decarbonizing buildings, specifically in this sector?
Thank you, Sarah, for the kind introduction. So, yes, we've been talking about how to decarbonize different infrastructures. Now we're going to talk about how to decarbonize the architecture. Architecture is also related to transportation. We have all train stations, we have a lot of buildings that are connecting different infrastructures. And it is very important to bear in mind that we're also part of the players in these climate change solutions. So when it comes to buildings, we are aiming to design and have already done this exercise, what's called zero energy buildings. So to design zero energy buildings, we like to address it in 4 steps. First of all, we like to reduce the energy that this building is going to need. And how do we do that? Well, we do it with appropriate and good thermal envelope, roof and facades. We do it by choosing optimal orientation whenever it's possible, and of course taking into account the context of each project and the specific climate analysis of the place where we are going to have this building. Second step will be related to the MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems that we include in the design of our buildings. We need to choose the most efficient systems, and also those systems that will be providing comfort to users. We are tending to use water radiant systems in all of our buildings when it comes to design zero energy buildings. And also having appropriate selection of conditioning or ventilating the different spaces. And then third step would be to go into the renewable energy. Now that we have reduced the energy demand of our buildings, we will rely on renewable energies such as solar or geothermal. Then the last step will be to monitor, because we're not talking only about operations, we're talking about embedded energy, embedded emissions, and also operational emissions. And for this, we need to monitor the life cycle aspects of the buildings during all the useful life of all our buildings. So I think that taking into account that buildings, not only in transportation, but buildings in general, amount for 40% of energy consumption and 33% of greenhouse emissions, I think there is a lot of room for improvement in this area.
Thank you. Could you give us some examples, a specific project that you might be working on?
Yes. So today we have Adif here, who's our client for this case study we are bringing in, which is the high-speed train station in La Coruña in Spain. This is the first high-speed train station in Spain that has been designed as zero-energy buildings. What we have done to achieve the standard of zero-energy buildings is to apply these 4 steps that we already described in a specific manner, including the appropriate thermal envelope, including, for instance, skylights are all oriented versus north so that we avoid direct radiation. We are then, in terms of system, we have designed what's called the thermally activated building system, which is a water radiant system embedded in the structure of the building. We have to take into account that we're talking about renovation and extension of an already existing train station. So by using this system, we are taking advantage of the inertia of our building, thus increasing its efficiency and also providing higher comfort to all users. And we have selected which areas should be only ventilated, such as large vestibules, or which areas will be conditioned like commercial areas in the station. And then the last step of designing zero-energy buildings comes to renewable energies. In this case, all the platforms are covered by a roofing system that includes photovoltaic panels overlooking south. We are taking skylights oriented north and using the solar energy by having photovoltaic panels. So I think a last comment to this is that this project has been granted with funds from the European Union, and thus follows also European regulation in terms of the so-called do not significant harm policy that is related also to waste management, as well as circular economy that implies the use of recycled, sustainable, and local or regional materials as well.
Thanks, Yolanda. And finally, at last but not at least, we also have room to discuss about gender, specifically in the transportation industry. And the best person to do that is Inés Sánchez de Madariaga, excuse me. Hi, Inés. Inés is a UNESCO chair on gender and also professor of urban planning at Universidad Politécnica de Madrid. So, Inés, why is gender so relevant also in this specific industry?
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here with you today. Gender is important because women are half of the population, more than half of the population, and women are the ones who undertake most of these tasks on everyday living that are needed for the reproduction of life. This is what we call gender issues, and those are highly relevant for transportation. We know that women and men use transport differently, they have different needs, they move differently in the city, and this has to be tackled by transport investment and by transport planning and infrastructure. I would like to point out to 5 key areas in which gender should be addressed in transportation. The first one is probably the most obvious. It's getting women into the transportation labor force. There's quite a bit of experience in this area, and it implies addressing women across the workforce, all types of jobs, in terms of attraction, retention, promotion, and particularly addressing gender violence in a very highly dominated and difficult working environment. Secondly, another important aspect is getting the data right. We know that quite often transportation data are not sex disaggregated, and even less we have appropriate gender indicators that can capture the needs and the realities of gender-related movement in the city and also of what women do. For instance, we are now working in a project of time savings for women in transportation investments with the European Investment Bank. In this sense, I developed a few years ago for the Spanish Ministry of Transportation the concept of the mobility of care that allows to quantify and to make visible all the trips, the purpose of trips that statistically it's women who make them for care-related tasks in daily living. These trips normally are hidden under other categories, so they look unimportant. They look like there are few, but when we are given to give them a name, an umbrella name, we can count them. So this can allow us to change the priorities of transportation policy. That's why it's important to have gender indicators, regardless of whether it's men or women who make those particular trips.
And how can the transportation sector successfully promote gender equality?
Yes, I would say that there are three other areas in which very direct action can be taken. The first one is the design of stations and vehicles, and we have a very important experience with ADIF, the Spanish company, in getting criteria for integrating gender issues into the design of stations that started with 3 pilot projects only 4 years ago. And today, ADIF has already integrated into all the public procurement for new stations and the renovation of existing stations. And now it has been scaled up to over 200 train stations in the country, in Spain. A second area is the area of safety. We know that perceived subjective safety, it's what is important for women to move around freely in the city. It's not actual crimes, but perceived subjective safety. And in this area, it's very important, both in formal and formal surveillance and urban design, and the physical features of the transportation infrastructure are very important. We know that we apply normally 5 criteria for safe urban design, and we implement those with the participation of women who are the users of systems, and this allows to identify the problems and how to act on solving that. And then I would like to finally mention the importance of integrating urban planning with transportation, because transit particularly is in cities, and this implies that we have to address transportation and urban design throughout the scale of the planning hierarchy of tools and plans. And we have a very interesting experience also in Spain with the Madrid Nuevo Norte, which is a very big urban redevelopment in the north of Madrid, size of Canary Wharf, in which we have, this is a toolkit we developed with this experience. We have advised the developers on how to integrate gender throughout the whole process of design. We have supported them in drafting the gender impact statement, which is a legal requirement in many parts in Spain today. And we have also produced a number of other issues like this toolkit, which can help other developments similar to it, and also some coaching and training for the staff and also the executive teams and the engineers and so on that were working in the project.
Well, thank you so much, Ines, and thanks everyone here for sharing all these great examples and experiences in the effort of transforming transportation, going green. Before opening the floor to questions, I would like to remind you that we do have the Spanish stand in the lobby. This is all organized by ISEX, so don't be shy, just reach out after the panel. They will be all happy to help you. And then, yes, let's just open the floor for questions. Please.
Hi, hola. Lake from Chile, a researcher on gender and transport. So first, many, many thanks to Ines for your groundbreaking theoretical and practical work in this field. It's had a huge impact worldwide, but particularly in Latin America. And you know, we're a feminist government in Chile nowadays, so it's really important to have evidence to base action upon. So thank you. And the question is, what we're increasingly finding in our emerging research is how 3 kinds of violence intertwine in roads and transport and mobility spaces. Gender violence, but which also involves a male role because of the way men are trained and formed from when they're children, that's not being addressed. That is, you give them a car and you teach them to be aggressive and go, there's a social formation of gender in the case of the male sex, that is extremely violent on roads and elsewhere. And then there's criminal violence, and then there's road violence by drivers against subordinated modes, walking, cycling, and particularly with walking and public transport, the majority are women. So I'm just wondering if you're seeing those emerge either in your theoretical or your practical work, and if you're looking at ways of addressing all three at once, because they all occur at the same time and in similar places. There are possibilities there.
Well, I am not aware of experiences of addressing all these different angles of violence simultaneously. Of course, they are interrelated, but they are different. And the ways of acting in terms of policy in each of them, some of the possible actionable policy options could be the same, but I'm not sure very much would be the same. And I'm not aware of someone who has of an institution or country that has been addressing all of these simultaneously. I'm not aware. Maybe it exists, but I'm just not aware. I'm sorry about that. But my guess is that there's like different places for the location of policy to address them, because they are of different nature, and the responsibility lies in different parts of policy systems. So that would be my guess. Yeah.
We do have a second question, I believe.
Yes, hi everyone, and thanks for this presentation. My name is Alvaro, and I have a question to Felix from Acciona. I was wondering, when trying to implement these projects that are require more investment but are more ambitious to achieve decarbonization, are you finding any resistance from maybe from governments or from other entities? And if so, how are you dealing with them?
Okay. Thank you, Alvaro. Yes, in fact, we are facing this kind of project. I have to say that by concept, if it's more expensive, we are trying not to do so. For example, we were talking before about modular construction. With modular construction, you can save up to 40% of raw materials and consequently lots of money. But by concept, I like to say that is more expensive because I need every single stakeholder to understand that this is a more ambitious proposal. So we need to internalize costs that we are not considered in the current way of doing things. So when we build an infrastructure and we build for one use and we abandon after 100 or 200 years, there is a cost that we are not internalizing. So what we need from regulators, governments, and clients is to consider the full concept of what they need. So we have to understand our activity on Earth, not only on infrastructure, but on Earth, with taking into account the consequences we are producing in future generations. That's what I mean, and that's why a session like this one is so important, to try to not only to explain, but also for ourselves to understand the needs of a new way of doing things. So yeah, we need help from every single stakeholder, from the citizens that have to ask different solutions, for governments and regulators that have to define in a different way their needs, and finally from the financial institutions that have to consider this kind of infrastructure in an upper level than the traditional ones. Thank you.
Yes?
Can you hear me loudly enough, or do you use a microphone?
We do hear you, yes.
Here you have one.
Bottom
got
left.
it, got it, sorry. Richard Threlfall from KPMG. I lead our sort of government and infrastructure practice, and I just wanted to tie the point that Felix made back to, I thought, your comment, Ines, about one of the changes that we're seeing is a moving beyond cost-benefit analysis to a broader, what you called multi-criteria analysis to make the decisions. You were talking obviously specifically in the context of urban transport planning. But flipping that back to what Felix has just said, I guess one of the things that's really interesting me is, are we seeing the development of the robust systems that allow that multi-criteria analysis to be properly applied? We've had decades and decades of really developing cost-benefit analysis to quite a high level of sophistication. I think it's absolutely right that we're broadening that out to cover a whole set of other criteria, including impact on future generations, which is perhaps the most difficult of the lot. But I'm not entirely convinced I'm seeing the methodologies in place yet and sort of accepted at a national and a multinational level in order to do that. And I was just really interested if anyone in this conversation was seeing progress in that space. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So we would agree that it is necessary to go beyond the cost-benefit analysis into the multi-criteria analysis. This is clear. I actually have here with me today our transport and mobility planning director, and I would like him to share with us the specific examples he has been conducting in Spain, because it seems that the system is becoming more, and the methodology is becoming more and more robust. But Jose, please share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, Ines. Yes, the reason is because we started applying cost-benefit analysis to the whole scenario of the planning, not for a single project, but also for all the projects, including the mobility plan, because there are many synergies between them. But then we realized, for applying the regulatory framework and the impact of climate change, cost-benefit is not enough. You know that all the environmental aspects are considered only as externalities, and it represents only 5% of the total result of the cost-benefit analysis. You know, the saving in operating cost, saving of time, etc., is the most important aspects in a cost-benefit analysis, but the environmental aspects are considered in a very marginal way. That's why we move, together with the European Commission and EIB, to a multi-criteria analysis, of course considering the result of the cost-benefit analysis as one criterion of the multi-criteria, but not the only one to select the scenario. We consider climate change, affordability, social aspects, health, etc., many other aspects that are not properly considered in a cost-benefit analysis. That's the reason why we move from a traditional methodology to a multi-criteria analysis. That's the main reason.
Wanted to remind you that we also have an online chat in case anyone at home is following the session. But yeah, anyone else that would like to ask something? Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Grace Ashley. I'm a transportation consultant with the World Bank. My question is to Yolanda, and it's basically on decarbonizing architecture. And so what I would want to know is that in decarbonizing architecture related to transportation, how scalable are the interventions that you mentioned? You know, and I would like to know if there has been interest from developing countries to adopt the strategies that you mentioned, and is there a gender component in decarbonizing architecture? Thank you.
So thank you for your question. I think the solutions are completely scalable. One important aspect is that I mentioned, for instance, here, is that this is a renovation. So we're not dealing only with new buildings or new infrastructure. We are reusing existing structural systems to increase their current state into a new type of system. This is possible. We have already done it, and we've already tested because those buildings were built some years ago. So it's, all of these solutions are completely scalable. And in terms of adopting these solutions in emerging countries, it's true that we don't have that much experience yet, because we were talking about cost-benefit analysis or stakeholders' resistance to change. This has happened in Spain or in Europe. The regulatory framework now is, mandatory. So now when we do that in Europe, it's not a matter of, well, is the client willing, to do this, or because it's mandatory and we need to do it, and then they'll see the benefits. But in terms of applying these solutions elsewhere, where the regulatory framework is not yet asking for zero energy building design, we have not seen the case yet. What we try to do is, we've always tried to do it before the regulatory framework came. That was the case in Spain with some of the buildings that we designed before the directives were mandatory. But it's true, it's more, some of the solutions are more challenging, maybe a little bit more expensive, and this short-term thinking of some of our clients will not help. However, I think that this is a trend, and this is going to be happening in, worldwide. So it's just a matter of time. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question about the intersection of automation and public transit and environmental issues. So automation has at least the potential to provide public transit that is more frequent, but offsetting the frequency of people using public transit is also that it has some environmental impacts from all the computing power. And so I just wanted to see if anyone has a comment about the environmental impacts of that.
Yes, Michel, maybe?
Yeah, well, from the point of, from the public transport agency point of view, if you get high demand and high frequency, you will be more, you will optimize the service. So it means less, let's say, let's consume per passenger. So at the end, the final result is that you will be more sustainable. And that's why a lot of cities are working on increasing frequency in railway systems or in bus systems or in tramway systems. And here the technology plays a big role. In an automated metro line, for example, you can run until 80 seconds, 80 seconds between trains in a very safe way. So and that makes the system very optimized. So I don't know if the question were in this sense that you asked. Your comment was in this sense or not. I don't know. Of course, that is quite interesting in a very dense areas, very urban areas, and here the big challenge is how to put this kind of backbone service with another service to reach to the last destination, because not always you are going for a very dense area to another very dense area, where apparently you can give a very frequent service. So here the challenge is how to combine that with another solutions, mobility solutions. I don't want to be limited to public transport, but mobility solutions that permits you to do the whole trip. And that is one of our big challenge nowadays, what we call seamless traveling. How can I go from my home in the outskirts of the city to my college in the city center, for example, using sustainable mobility solutions.
We do have a follow-up question regarding this topic, I think. No?
So there's a question from the online audience.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So this question is from Louis Uechi. He's asking the panel, wouldn't the introduction of an efficient and fair carbon market improve the inclusion of climate matters in the cost-benefit analysis so that the multi-criteria analysis will not be necessary? I can ask it again. wouldn't the introduction of an efficient and fair carbon market improve the inclusion of climate matters in the cost-benefit analysis so that the multi-criteria analysis will not be necessary? Thank you.
Thank you. I think Ines maybe is the right person to answer that.
Well, I'm not a finance expert, but I do know that it is actually part of the objectives within the European Union to grow climate financing, the green bonds. And of course, the answer would be yes, but we're not there yet. That would be my answer. It's a work in progress. I think it's part of the pathway that's being set out, but we still have a little bit to go. And I think right now we should stick to the multi-criteria until it's ready for let's say a scale up of the system.
We have some comments there.
Sorry, I would like to add that, as I said before, the current methodology for cost-benefit analysis is not appropriate for considering. In fact, European Commission is now thinking about a new version of the methodology for the cost-benefit analysis in order to incorporate all these aspects that are crucial. But with the current methodology for cost-benefit, the current European guidelines for cost-benefit is not enough. That's why we had to incorporate multi-criteria analysis. It's like a transition, because I think that in the coming years will be a new version of the methodology of cost-benefit analysis that will allow to include all these aspects, but not now. Not now.
And Felix?
Yeah, well, it's been said already by Jose, right? It's been already said by Jose, but the question with the carbon markets, as they are built today, they are facing, or they are giving an answer to scope 1 and 2. That means electricity used in job sites and combustible. That is a lot, but it's also an scope 3 associated to the raw materials that we use that is not answered by the carbon markets as they are built today. So I reinforce the answer from Jose that is we need a different concept, not a financial market to solve the problems that we have. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yes, hello. Jose Cordovilla from TIPSA, Director of Advisory Services. So just to complement on this, I mean, for those who are interested in cost-benefit analysis, there is one fundamental flaw or shortcoming in cost-benefit analysis, that is the discount rate. You analyze the value of things, losing value over time. So fundamental environmental and long-term costs or externalities then are not given the same importance, because they tend to happen very far in the future. But anyhow, so I wanted to take advantage of Alvaro or Fadif being here to ask if you can give us a little bit of insight on what is happening right now internationally in the field of long distance high-speed rail transportation. I don't know if a lot of people here know, but ADIF is Spain has the longest high-speed rail network in the world, just after China, and and one of the densest as well. So, and there is a lot of discussion about also the cost and benefits and the affordability of high speed. So what are you seeing? Can you share what are you seeing in the international arena about the current policies on high speed rail transportation? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Well, as you mentioned, so we know that in Spain we are after China, that is other figures. We are the first or the second after China, the high-speed network. We know that it's not only Europe, but in many countries, and there are the interest in high speed. Well, in the railway connection with a railway of high performance. Well, in fact, last week was the Congress of High Speed in Morocco, with all countries were present, also, of course, Spain. And from our point of view, so what we are seeing is that the high-speed railway is really well affected in the countries where are being implemented. And in fact, from our experience, in terms of the benefits, is that really, at least in Spain, for example, the 2/3 of the population are connected with the high speed. In our case, as we have the high speed and also the conventional, we are really arriving to all the countries. I mean, and in terms of for the use, as I said before, now that we are having more operators in our network, we know that we are able to increase the capacity. So in fact, in Spain, we have increased the capacity by 60%, 65% in the network. And maybe also answering the question about the use of the network, we know that we have also the technological tools to really have a high frequency and high use of this network. In other countries, we know that we are the result of this expertise in Spain of the railway Spanish sector that now we are exporting to other countries, and we know that we are seeing that at the moment there are all countries they have already implemented the network, or they are working on that. In Europe, we can talk about the Rail Baltica. The Baltic countries are working on that. In Poland also is very interesting. It's a very interesting project that hopefully is going to connect to the east with Ukraine. We are seeing in Mexico, for example, an interesting project. We are seeing of course in China, in Japan, in India. So it's a high speed and railway generally is a very interesting mode of transport in order for this social economic development of the region where they are arriving. I don't know if that answers because the question.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to hear perhaps more specifically about what is the discussion on sustainability of the rail high-speed rail network. I mean, what role it plays in the whole sustainable transport scope.
In terms of sustainability, as well, Sarah has mentioned before some figures about in terms of our role in the transports. I also know that yesterday some figures came from the whole perspective in the world. In Spain, the 30% of the emission comes from the transport. And in our case, I think in railways, I have the note, it's in that 30%, our emissions is the 0.3 emissions. And in terms of the energy consumptions, if transport consumes the 40% of the energy consumption, railways is the 1.2. So taking an example of high-speed connection in Spain, the Madrid-Barcelona, the two main cities in Spain, exactly. There were a previous rail connection, conventional connection, but it's at the time for this 600 kilometers distance, people prefer to use the air connection. Now we know that in fact we are celebrating the 15th anniversary of this connection, and the 75% of people are taking this rail high-speed connection. With the new operators, in fact, also we have double the traffic compared to before the pandemic. I mean, compared to 2019. And well, in terms of sustainability, for us, it's clear that it's well, that in Spain, with the entrance of the new operators, really people are choosing. We are offering more possibilities to the passengers to take the train. Also with better prices.
Thanks. We do have a gentleman ready for asking a question. Thanks.
Thank you. So it's actually a question to Álvaro as well. So I'm Carlos Bellas. I work mostly with Brazil, and the Lula government is also actually considering reviving the high-speed rail project in between Campinas and Rio, no? And if you do the typical cost-benefit analysis, then it seems that it's not feasible. But the same economists said the same from a deep line to Galicia. I am from Galicia, and we are screwing these economists that said that the railway line to Galicia will not be used. No? So actually there is a lot of reprieve demand that can come, especially with liberalization. Italy is ahead of Spain in that sense. No, the demand has exploded like 30–40% with liberalization and coming up of Italo. So, Álvaro, can you explain also why it's important to spend public money on high-speed rail, like as Spain is doing, and if that's the case for Brazil, no? So that's something that we can discuss potentially with the government.
Okay, well, you mentioned Italy and other example of liberalization in Europe. Well, Italy have started before, but at the moment in Europe, Spain has we are really the leaders in terms of the number of operators in our network. In terms of the investment and well, I can talk about the case in Spain that we are talking about the public investment, and we have to be really responsible in the use of this budget coming from one side from the Spanish budget, and also of course coming also from we have mentioned in different speakers about the European funds. Now that in fact that after the experience with the European funds come from the case, but now after the pandemic that we are also receiving an important injection with that recovery and resilience plans coming from Europe. I can talk about our experience as a public entity managing this public investment, and for us, being public, I don't feel like I am in a business way. I mean, is for us is our responsibility to develop, to implement that network, and also we have a lot of experience talking with other countries, other stakeholders, and other counterparts, minister, railway infra managers, and also different governors from other countries, including Brazil. And we share with them our experience in how we have developed this network.
Well, unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. We're running out of time, but thank you all for being here. Thanks to all the panelists as well. And please, let's continue the conversation outside. Thank you so much.